call this to order. We're missing some of our members because it's a very busy day. Let's call it to order. I guess we'll call roll, if you would, Josh, please.
Senator Hutchings.
Here.
Senator Cost.
Excused.
Senator Landon.
Here.
Senator Pappas.
Here.
Senator Rothfuss.
Here.
Representative Banks.
Here.
Representative Brown.
Here.
Representative Harshman.
Excused.
Representative Jennings. Representative Walters.
Excused.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Committee, we had listed this committee for two purposes. One, as I've indicated to most of you before Senator Hutchings came in, there's a requirement by statute that we meet quarterly. This is the last day of the first quarter, and we haven't met. So it's important to do that. We also listed interim topics. Given the fact that we have several of our members not here, I'm not sure how effective we can be on that front. But Josh, do you have any thoughts about interim topics that you might share with us?
Sure. So, Mr. Chairman, since this is a statutory committee, there are statutory responsibilities, and that is often the only interim topic that's included. So those are select committee is charged by statute to monitor the assessment of statewide school facility needs, prioritization of those needs, and remediation of identified needs as undertaken by the School Facilities Commission and the State Construction Department, to develop knowledge and expertise among its members relating to statewide facility adequacy, to prepare budget recommendations addressing statewide building and facility needs, and to review any commission rules. And so that is often the only interim topic that's listed. On occasion, there are some that get added outside of that. But if you didn't have anything specifically that you needed to do outside of that, that's fairly broad for what this committee does.
Committee, any questions of Josh regarding Senator Pappas?
Not a question, but Mr. Chairman, that's been the number one priority and for the last 2 years, and I'm sure subsequent years. So certainly I think that needs to be the number one priority, but I think that there may be folks online that have others, so I'd be interested to hear more if there are.
Right, we'll get to that,
Yeah.
Senator.
So-
I'm more concerned with our committee at this point. I want to make sure that we do have some newcomers, and welcome to everyone, by the way. This is a good committee and it's an important one. So any questions, any other thoughts with regard to our statutory responsibilities? And as Josh indicated, in all the years that I've been on school facilities, we have seldom gone beyond these bounds. You might recall during this session, we have talked about the issue of suitability and student environment and how we would tie that into our assessment of our buildings out there. That was an effort that really did not go very far. I don't think enough members of our legislature really wanted to incorporate, even though that does appear in our statute. So that, just so everybody on the committee realizes that that suitability issue is out there, and it remains something that we've got to figure out how to get our arms around. Up to this point, we have just folded that underneath condition. And I'm looking at Senator Rothfuss because he's been on this committee a long time too. And we've handled it that way, but it was an effort this year to maybe try to drill down a little bit and get a better handle on it. I think beyond that, I don't have anything. Senator Rothfuss, any thoughts as one of the veterans on the committee?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the one thing that we haven't ever been able to tackle that we talk all the time about is some of our larger districts have planning concept concerns that our smaller districts don't have, where scheduling of need is a little bit different than smaller districts where, 20 years passes and you build a school and you know which school you're going to build. Senator Pappas's district and Senator Hutt, well, I guess pretty much everyone on this side of the table and over here is are in a district that have a series of different interlocking needs at all times. And the way that we do our prioritization sometimes makes it hard to cost effectively plan for a rollout over like a 10-year plan. And of course, we struggle to fund it too at the same time. So we've always talked about that. And if we have some free bandwidth, I'd sure like to talk about how we can incorporate a planning concept into what is usually a 1-year budget.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer.
Senator Rothfuss, I appreciate you bringing that up because anytime you talk about education in Wyoming, you're talking small districts versus large districts. And it's no different on school facilities. If we're really going to get into this and do a good job with it, I think that's very appropriate that we maybe think about how we do things. And, quite honestly, there have been some stresses with it, with a big district. And so I am not afraid to tackle any of those kind of issues. Senator Pappas, you wanted to jump in.
And to that point, because one size doesn't fit all, I think we need to come up with a strategy for different size districts, even locations. Our virtual urban locations versus rural locations. And so there's a lot of things that need to come in, up on this. But another thing I would like to, if we've got the bandwidth, as you may or may not know, I was a commissioner on the first School Facilities Commission way back when it was created. And I had a different vision back then than we do now. And I've met with the School Facilities Division since actually over the past couple of years, since I haven't been on. It's been 2 years since I've been on this committee. And we, the legislature, as a collective body, have really changed through multiple legislative changes, the actual scope and intent that we originally were out there. And so I think we've really muddied the water over time. I would like to go back and do a review of all of our statutes, where we started, how we've morphed, and find out whether are we still on the right path. I, for one, think we've gotten a little bit too prescriptive on things. We've taken things away from districts that I don't think we should have. I'd like to revisit that. I'd also like to look at the relationship that our districts have with the division and see how that works. Certainly with large districts like mine and the one at Natrona, we have personnel that can do a lot of the things that small districts can't, And so there are things that we can do in large districts that we should just let the large districts do, but small districts may need that help. So like I said, not one size fits all. And I just think we ought to look at that, the procedures, the amount of reports that we require, the data that we require. Do we need it all even? I'm not so sure. Anyhow, I just like to review where we've been, where we started, how we've got to where we are, and let's determine whether we want to be where we are. If maybe we do. I don't know. I just think we need to review all of that. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you, Senator. I think there's some good points made there. Senator Rothfuss.
Yeah, I understand that too, and agree that there's a lot we could review. I think we need to narrow a little bit of focus because that description was a lot more than I feel like we can do with the bandwidth we'll have, but it gets at the same concepts, which I think we know that. I mean, I was just looking the other day, about 8 of the school districts, boy, it's going to take up about 80% of all of the CapCon, and we could figure out what those numbers are. But and certainly 4 or 5 of our school districts have a pretty substantial professional staff that work on school facilities, and they need far less hand-holding than, you know, our Claremont district, for example, probably is not going to be able to bring together the human power to build a building, for example. So I think there are some things we could take a look at and figure out how we can optimize and utilize those resources a little better, so that we rely on those that have the resources already a bit more. Big districts like all of yours, maybe mine. I'm not actually sure whether mine falls into the big district or small district on this one in terms of, you know, whether they want their handheld or not from the school facilities folks. But any district that can take away some of that work themselves then frees up bandwidth, again, using that expression, for the school facilities department to then focus a little bit more. I mean, it won't free up dollars, right? The dollars are still unfortunately the dollars, but at least having the attention span to work with the smaller school districts, where we know that a lot of the time of the school facilities department is spent with the larger districts. Maybe there's a way we can do that a little bit better. And the other thing that we did a few years ago, Mr. Chairman, you'll remember, I think we did great work on trying to calculate what an appropriate annual budget is, what an appropriate annual major maintenance is, the percentages, how we do that. And actually, Stefan, you were there for that one too. That was your last year before you had the hiatus. That was great work that has just been summarily disregarded. And I don't know if it's worth taking a look at that as part of it as well, how we can maybe make another run at getting major maintenance appropriately funded and prioritized to minimize the long-term cost of it. It just gets back to the same question from a minute ago, Mr. Chairman. We have a 1-year vision on a 100-year problem.
Yeah.
How can we do better than that?
Good points made. Really want to make sure that newcomers and old comers alike get a chance to weigh in on this. It strikes me that all of the things said by the senators really might fit into an opportunity, Josh. I'm kind of thinking that first meeting or two, that we might be able to incorporate this look at some of the differences in larger and small districts. And I like Senator Pappas's idea that we maybe take a look at where we started and how far we came and why we are where we are today. And that would give us, you know, the education that we need to decide if we want to go somewhere else with everything. And by the way, I would just comment to the School Facilities Select Committee that next door, we're actually considering legislation that would throw this out the window. The Senate has decided that it doesn't want to do this anymore. That we want to change the Constitution and go to, if you float a local bond, you can build a building. And if you don't float a local bond, you're not going to build one. So that's a complete flip-flop of everything that we've talked about today. As you can tell in my voice, I have a lot of skepticism as to whether or not that's even constitutional or would work. My constituents are not going to be interested in building a building down in Senator Rothfuss's neighborhood. I'll tell you that. Yeah, there you go. So, you know, that's a big topic. And if we choose to pass that constitutional amendment next door and on into the House and through the House, I don't know if that purview or that responsibility will land with this committee or not. So Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it does to an extent. I think you still have this because there's still a big portion of what's in that constitutional amendment as far as you still have the major maintenance portion. And that's a big portion of what we're going to be studying and looking at here. And he has specifically extruded that out from the responsibilities. So you still have that aspect, but you also have a great deal of time should it pass that committee, pass the House, go to the next general election for a vote. We still have a lot of time in between there that this body is probably going to be working to get a lot of this information done. One of the things when I looked at this committee and what do we need to do? What do we need to look at? I think one of the biggest things is exactly what he is attempting to accomplish over there is a suitable expectation of what we can and cannot build in this state. I think that's probably the most pressing issue, especially coming from one of the two counties that's growing in this state with student population. We are in the need of building schools, and we don't have a funding mechanism to do such things.
Correct.
And I think it's well within the purview of this committee to have that discussion and continue to look at alternative streams of funding. One of the questions that I asked across the hall just now is, we offer in our Constitution 4 statewide mill levies that we don't do anything with right now. Well, we have 4 that we have constitutionally dedicated to us that we haven't touched. And I think that's one of the things that we need to, we have growing needs in certain communities. And I can remember 3 years ago when the discussion was, do we build in Jackson or do we build in Cheyenne? We can't build both. So who's the winner, who's the loser? And that is a crying shame that that's where we're at.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably, in my opinion, Mr. Chairman, I think that's probably one of the most pressing issues that we need to be addressing as this committee.
Very well stated, Representative. I agree with everything you said. Generally speaking, this operation has worked pretty well. Every one of our 48 districts, we've gotten schools on the ground. And I always like to try to remind anyone when we begin to talk about school facilities that we've got this fleet of schools out there, 25, 26 million square feet of a building fleet. And we've been able to affect about a quarter of it in the last 15 years. And those buildings ought to last us about 60, 70 years. We're hopeful if we can take care of that major maintenance piece that Senator Rothfuss was referring to. So let's say 60 or 70 years, then that means that over the course of the next 15 years, we probably better take care of about 25% more of these buildings out across the state. That goes to what Representative Brown was talking about. But about a quarter of the fleet every 15 to 20 years or so. And, that's the stark reality of what we've got out across there. Representative Brown's right. We've got growth going on here, and we've got growth going on up in the Afton Star Valley area and Teton County. We've put a school on the ground up in Teton County and a couple of schools here on the ground. We still have work to do. I was pleased that with the help of everybody on this panel, we kept the small school of Tinsley in the budget. That's been, to me, one of the great benefits of a program like this is that those parts of the world who really don't have much constituency have been able to get some help getting a school on the ground when it's really needed. And so that's been one of the things that I think we've done pretty well. But anyway, Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question on how deep do we get involved in the facilities? I didn't know if Senator Rothfuss was alluding when he said planning and concept. Do we get into the design of these schools, or is it just on the surface that this committee gets involved?
Generally speaking, Senator, I would answer that by saying, no, we don't get down to that level. Very seldom do we get that far down into the weeds. Mostly it takes place between the district and the school facilities division. Once in a while, there's design and duplication of buildings and things like that we'll talk. Go ahead, Senator Fattis.
Typically what we've done in the past is kept that sort of discussion at a higher policy level. We've talked about prototype schools. We've talked about, things like that drive dollars. But we have not got down into the weeds as far as design now. That's another big issue that maybe we ought to look at, and that's how far our school facilities division has gotten into the weeds when it comes to the actual construction process and selection process of contractors and designers. And I know for a fact here and on a project that I had that it was delayed so long because of all of the procedural things required by the SFD, the School Facilities Division, that it delayed it a full year and cost us, a full year on that particular school. If you figure a 4% inflation rate, which we had that year, that's $88,000 a month. Okay, for a full year. Okay, we did it too. We took the money away from it for a full year. Okay, so we're our own worst enemies. So we denied the funding for a year, cost us $88,000 a month, and then when we restored the funding, we restored it in April. It was immediately available. The drawings could have gone out in June. Because of the issues between the district and the SFD folks, it didn't go out. We didn't go to bid till October.
Right.
So we got to.
I think we will all grant you that Laramie One has been a real challenge the last 2 or 3 years.
We've got to.
No question about it. It's
we've got
really
to just streamline
been a tough-
those.
I think that's very much worthwhile. I wanted to jump in real quickly and go to Representative Brown in a minute. It is 2 minutes to 2 o'clock, just so everybody knows. I don't know, when does the House go back in? 2:30? 2. One of the duties that we have statutorily required is it's up to this committee to elect its leadership. I don't know what the pleasure of the committee is today. We don't have a lot of our members here. We could do that in our next meeting, or we could, Josh, I think I've got that right. We're supposed to elect leadership.
Yeah, since this is the first after a general session, then yeah, you would select a chairman and a vice chairman.
So technically after the general session, and so we
Mr.
could
Chairman,
go either
that's-
way. I mean,
Yeah, I think the other opportunity that we have here is, and I was telling this to Senator Pappas, while we're still in session, we've got 4 more days technically that we can meet while still in session and not hit the budget. And I think it's more than capable of being done in those 4 days, Thursday, Friday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
truthfully, Representative, what we've done in the past, and we don't have to stick with anything we've done in the past, that first meeting of the interim has normally been when we gather and we say, by the way, I nominate so-and-so and I nominate so-and-so and we elect leadership. We don't have to do that today. This was just our statutory requirement. But I'm good. I'm good to go ahead, Senator Rothfuss. What are your thoughts?
Based on our small number here and the fact that we're 1 over a quorum, I think that it's probably prudent for us to push that off to the first meeting and take that as our first action at the first meeting
Yeah.
once we get
I
back
don't-
together.
Nothing nefarious. I just think.
Yeah, no,
that's the first
it's
thing
a
we
good
do when we come
conversation.
back together.
Yeah.
And
And it definitely is a statutory requirement for us to take that action.
yeah,
Josh, the statute right now says the first meeting after a general session, correct?
It doesn't specify. It just says select committee shall select from among its members a chairman and vice chairman. So there's no specific deadline. So
Okay.
certainly could be handled at
I
the
think we
first
should do it that
meeting.
way then.
we could gather in the next 4 days. A handful of us may not come down on Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm looking down there at a couple guys who are living a long ways away, but we can zoom in and do whatever. Why don't we do that, committee, if that's all right? And I'll get with Chairman Walters. The 2 years that Chairman Walters just spent, he is a member of the House, and the way this also works by statute, the next 2 years will be chaired by the Senate and vice chaired by the House. So just keep that in mind, and Josh or Karen, do you guys have anything for the select committee?
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, and
Was
Senator
there-
Pappas.
I just wondered if there was anyone online. We should probably give them the,
There has been no one to provide virtual testimony. No.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for that reminder, though, Stefan. Appreciate it. Gentlemen, good to see you. Ladies,